you'll find that the communication from your field personnel are increased, exponentially. They talk more normally. They're less likely to hide things and say, hey, look, this has always been an issue. How do I address it, or how can we address this? When you switch from being an auditor to an advocate, your communication and your operations improves. Safety adherence and participation increases across the board. It's a really, really interesting line. You see it happening.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zhao. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EH&S program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Canary Report, a podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operating executives come for real-world stories and smart strategies on how to keep people safe. I am your host, Michael Zhao, the founder and CEO of Yellowbird. Today, joining me is Joseph Klinzing. He is an amazing human being. He is a veteran, and he is a wonderful guy, and he is a rigging operations manager for GE Healthcare. Joe, you are a man who has had quite an experience and quite a life. And why should we listen to you today? I will tell everybody why. You have supported across the United States rigging operations and critical lift operations. You have delivered safety installations for life-saving health equipment, imaging systems, setting up safety and operations and program management, project management. Before that, you were 25 years in the U.S. Army, and thank you for that. We are big fans of the U.S. Army, and we are big fans of the U.S. military. And so I appreciate all that our veterans do. And I want to first and foremost say that as a leader, as a senior advisor to Army operations in a high consequence environment, you do understand what it means to have life and death situations, and also the intent to just be prepared and not have those situations. And that's what safety is all about. So thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Brad, thanks for asking me to have me on.
I always say that this is a human podcast, and it is. And our business is a human business. And so we started, we're just after the holidays. I don't know when this will be released, but we've just finished up the holidays. And we were talking about family, and we were talking about how busy it's been during the holiday season. Tell us about your family, your immediate family, and then where you grew up and kind of your journey as a human being before we get into the business stuff.
I am happily married to my lovely wife. This year will be 29 years, actually. We have one son. I was 13 years old. He's my buddy. He's my pal. Joined the Army in 1995. I just retired in February 2020, which I kind of joke about because my actual retirement date was February 28th. So I get to have a party every leap year is pretty much what it is. In the Army, I did a lot of stuff. I was in the Armor Corps. I was on tanks for my first 4 years. Then I transitioned over to Ordnance Corps. I did basically a lot of maintenance and stuff the rest of my career, along with instruction and teaching, and everything was thrown in there too. But most of it was really running maintenance and logistics operations for a long time in the Army. From there, I transitioned over to GE Healthcare. I was very lucky and blessed when I exited the Army. I actually got picked up by GE Healthcare about 7 months before I even retired. So it just, kind of worked out that way. But the hiring boss at the time took a chance on me, and I'm very appreciative of that opportunity. Never would have imagined I'd have been here. Initially, I was actually going to school to work under FEMA. That was my plan. I've got my master's degree in crisis management, emergency management, a bachelor's in criminal justice, and I was gearing myself to do that, and just fell into the GE realm. Good place. I love it. It's a great place to work. Other than that, I live here in Wisconsin. I'm just about 25, 30 minutes west of Milwaukee, and doing what I do and keeping people safe wherever I can, however I can.
So you were in tank operations. I see this on your wall behind you. Is that a picture or a drawing? It's hard to tell from this angle of the tank on the wall.
It's not real. It is a drawing.
Now, were you deployed? Did you actually go into theater? Were you actually in?
I deployed into Bosnia early on in my career, and then did Iraq a few times after.
And you were in maintenance and obviously on the tanking, on the tank side. And so Did you ever have to deal with any of the IEDs or other things that blew up? They had took tanks out that needed to be put back into commission. Was that part of your journey, or was that not an area that you focused? Just out of curiosity.
No, so the times that I was actually out there, ironically enough, I went to Iraq as in a more of an instructor and combat observation kind of role. First time I went out there, I was actually deployed as an instructor, and our task force actually trained the first new Iraqi army. We trained up their combat soldiers, their officers, their leadership corps, took them out on some of their first missions. The other times I went out there, I went out to actually perform maintenance on weapon systems. While we were there, myself and my counterpart that I was out there with, we got tagged by the Center for Army Lessons Learned and got asked to go out on various missions and actually observe how different missions are being conducted to help the Army better its training program prior to deployment. So it was actually different.
Wonderful. Well, I want to talk about that more, and particularly Gemba and some of your philosophies on lean operations. But before we get there, your wife of 29 years, which is amazing, by the way, congratulations. I've been married 25, and I'm among the few that I know married as long as I have been. And so it's always nice to see, people who are lifers like you and I in a good, positive way. So your wife, what does she work? I mean, obviously she's a mom and a wife, but does she have a job, an occupation otherwise?
She's a home mom. We homeschool our son. And that started because the path that my military career took, I moved every 2.5 years. So even when he was just that young still, it didn't make sense to put him into a school because we kept moving. So we decided that she's been homeschooling and in our position, again, I'm just blessed enough for her, she doesn't have to have a job. So she focuses on his school and all his extracurricular activities and whatnot. And it's just, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
That's fantastic. My son is now 21, but when he was 13, he was an avid baseball player. We did travel baseball. We went out to Cooperstown and we did all of this stuff. What are the extracurriculars that he's involved in? Is it athletic or is it intellectual, or what are the things that he enjoys?
So baseball, I'm actually one of the coaches. I sit on the board for the baseball league that he's a part of. Loves playing baseball. You see behind me the drums. They're his drums. He's a musician. He loves doing music. Drums is his big thing. He dabbled at the piano at first, hasn't gone back to it yet. I'm hoping he does. He dabbled with the saxophone. He picked that up, really quick, and then he put that down and type of thing. He picks up music really quick.
You've pretty much just described my son, who's now, again, 21. He's in architecture school and he loves building. But boy, funny enough, he got a big Lego set at 21 for Christmas because the Notre Dame Lego, the big,
Yes.
And my daughter also, who's 16, she got a Lego Dalmatian or something. They still love it. And he's a musician as well. And he played baseball. So you're basically, it's so funny you should say that. And reality is, if you can do drums, you can do rhythm, you can keep pace. There'll be a time if he wants to play piano, or my son did the opposite. He wanted to play drums, but I assume you have a basement.
Yes.
That is why you have drums, because I did not have a basement. And like heck, I was going to let him play drums in my garage because my neighbors would have killed me. So he went piano to guitar. He plays bass and that kind of stuff. But it's a wonderful thing. And he actually did the School of Rock. I don't know if you have School of Rock out there.
There's actually a School of Rock in Milwaukee.
You may want to look into it. It was a great experience for Nick. And they put little bands together and they actually perform, and it's really fun. So I don't know if you have any interest in that, but I'm going to throw that out there as a little awareness. It's kind of fun. So now let's talk about your business journey. So at GE Healthcare, you are a rigging specialist. And so I'm used to rigging specialists in areas like plane operations for major construction and civil engineering and, things that you're lifting very, very heavy things. Can you explain why a GE Healthcare needs a rigging coordinator manager? I mean, what is your role and why is it an important task for the business?
A global company, a company as large as we are, spread around the world. Hospitals are built in all different shapes, sizes, heights, and everything. And that's really where it comes into play. There's lots of customer sites and hospitals and clinics where they're the heavier systems, their imaging departments are on the second floor, the 10th floor. And every once in a while, especially with the heavier systems, larger systems, when you're talking imaging, like MRI machines and whatnot, it takes a crane to get it up to the top of the building. You're not lifting it up through the elevator, that's for sure.
No, that's for sure. Yes. Yes.
That's where the crane operations come in, is getting it into the hospitals and stuff when it's not just going in through the ground floor and being placed on the first floor. So,
It's funny when we talk about safety, and I mean, that's all we do at Yellowbird, anything associated with safety. Safety is a very broad thing, as we're just defining here. Even in the world of safety that we are talking about, you have healthcare experience, you have crane operations, but that's a very specific thing. But it's interesting because folks are always like, "Oh, I have a safety guy," and you're like, "I'm sure you do," but that's kind of like saying I have a doctor. It's like, well, if you have a brain tumor, it's different than if you twisted your ankle. And having a doctor is kind of like having a safety guy. It's like there's a lot to all of these things. So, are you responsible for? Is your purview over crane operations globally for all of it, or do you focus primarily in the U.S. or what is your role?
I look over that operation for the US and Canada. That's my region, is our US and Canada regions. I work with our international team and environmental health and safety matters and leaders in the other regions around the world. They do my role in their regions. It's working with the whole team globally, but I oversee specifically just for the US and Canada.
And how many deployments do you all do that requires rigging? I guess if I think about it, I'm going to answer for you, but maybe I'm wrong. But if I take my analytical mind, you're dealing with an MRI machine, or you're dealing with a PET scan, or you're dealing with something of scale like this, you probably have rigging on every single deployment you do, every single install, regardless of they're heavy as all get out. Even if you're on a single floor, they still have to be lifted.
There is some type, usually every once in a while, a crane can be used, or not a crane, but a forklift, right? You have the SkyTrack forklifts that can get some systems if it's going into like a second floor kind of thing. And if it's the right size forklift, every once in a while, the crane gets used just to get it basically like off of the truck and then to like the entrance of the building, because on level ground or uneven ground and stuff, and just carrying it with a standard forklift is not stable, right? So they use the crane for that. It really kind of varies. There's typically some kind of rigging involved with any kind of delivery of heavy systems. As far as critical lifts and whatnot, that kind of varies. As far as the number of critical lifts, it goes up and down as to how many we do and the types of situations that falls in.
Sure, no, it makes a lot of sense, and I imagine that people are not deploying these multi-$1 million systems every single day. I mean, there's only finite numbers that you're gonna be able to deploy, right? When they do maintenance on these machines, do they need to pull them out of the facility, and are you called in for maintenance type of stuff, or is it only on the initial installation?
There's normal services that get done, and there's things that happen, and equipment needs to be worked on and whatnot. And the field service engineers get called in for that, and they work on them in-house and stuff. It's definitely not an operation where you're pulling in and taking it out to work on it kind of thing. That's not really feasible or possible, actually.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It makes sense from a practical perspective. That does, yeah. Even asking the question's a little silly, but so do you own your own rigging equipment? Do you actually internally, are you responsible for doing your annual rig inspections and making sure that all of your equipment is certified annually and all the things that are required?
We use third party, so we go through a vendor credentialing process, and we have contractors, and some of the contractors actually third party out like the specific rigging operator, the crane operator, or whatnot. And there's a very specific process that they go through to be an accredited vendor for us. So they do all of that operation. They have all of that equipment and whatnot. Where that's not our specialty, that's their specialty. With me having an understanding and having experience working with that kind of equipment before, I'll review the lift plans that they put together just to make sure that our side of the information is accurate, that everything's accounted for, and the things are so that when it takes place on site, that all of our information has been properly accounted for in the lift plan.
Makes sense. Because again, if let's just say for an arbitrary purpose, they put down that it's 800 pounds and it's 8,000 pounds, or it's, a centralized load and it's really one-sided as far as the weight distribution is concerned. Those are the important details that only you would be able to really assess in advance. I mentioned earlier, and I was doing a little bit of research on the Gemba walk. Well, first and foremost, you guys are a lean operation, or you believe in lean philosophies around safety Gemba, and specifically, would you, and I'm happy to educate if you choose not to, but can you kind of educate our listeners on what Gemba is and what the philosophy is? And it's called, and I'll just answer this one for you, because you probably don't have it in front of you, but the Japanese word for Gemba is the real place. Can you go more into that?
Really put out there by Toyota years back. And it's come up and gone away as far as its popularity and how it gets used. I forget his name. Someone really brought it back into perspective, especially within the States. Sometime, I think in the mid 80s, it got brought back into, hey, look, as far as safety operations is concerned, like this really needs to be done. We should follow this example that was set by Toyota, and there you go. Really, the initial way was thought about was going to where the majority of the work takes place on a shop floor, right? Like Toyota, it was the manufacturing floor. It was the assembly line, seeing how things were going and talking to the people and all that kind of stuff on the assembly line. And since then, if you read a lot of information about it, you'll see that a lot of it is still geared towards fixed facilities, where it's walking around the facility, walking on that assembly line, walking to where your forklift operations are taking place in the warehouse, right? Transportation warehouses, you have transportation distribution centers, and Gemba is huge because it's walking the actual truck line. It's walking where your loading docks are at. It's looking at your storage facilities and talking to the individuals that are doing all those operations for you. Is really what a lot of it's geared towards. When you look at going to Gemba, right, when going to the line and looking for information or looking to, well, how is it done with a field operation? How is it done at a construction site? How is it done with a distributed workforce? There's really less information on how it should be conducted, on what to do. And you're more relying on experience and what your personnel have to tell you how things are working. And I think that's why I am extremely interested in that, is because we are a huge distributed workforce. No one situation is the same from another. No one location is the same from another. And so doing a quote-unquote Gemba walk is not as simple as just going out and watching the line and seeing how things are going. We do things different. That's why I personally take a much different approach to going out to the field and how I review things, how I observe things, and how I interact with team members that are out there doing the work.
So when I was doing, and I was less familiar than I should have been, and so I did a little bit of research. I try to be prepared for these conversations, but there was a very specific document that I read on the comparison of an audit to a Gemba. And it's a Gemba walk is about learning and observing and improving, where an audit is about verifying compliance. Where the tone is about collaboration and versus a inspection or a evaluative kind of a deal. The frequency being weekly or monthly versus annual and quarterly. Even the insights and, call them Kaizen actions versus findings and citations. I'm going to take it to heart, and I wasn't familiar with it. I was looking at that. And I think I'm going to try and integrate some of it into our business practices here, because I just love the philosophy. So I thank you for being an advocate for it. And I've been doing some research, and it's really neat. And so thank you for that. I appreciate that. So now, is this a philosophy that GE has integrated into their operation, or is this something that you as an individual found to be interesting and beneficial and have brought to the organization?
GE Healthcare is definitely supportive of managers and leaders getting out and actually talking to their teams and making sure that they have a good understanding of what is taking place out in the field, right, wherever their teams are. The company's absolutely in support of that. It's one of the things I really love about the company is that we really support that personal interaction with your teams. As far as how I do things, I kind of carried this from the military side of the house because in the military you could ask almost any veteran whether they're not serving anymore, whether they're still in. One of the things that is super important to us as a service member, as a soldier, is that immediate leadership is out there in the dirt with you. They understand what you're actually doing. They've gone through the exact same training that you've gone through. They've had to do the hard work. They haven't forgotten what it is. That kind of thing. So I've carried that with me, and so that's how I approach what I do. And in my current role, I think it's even more important to maintain that. So I do everything I can to make sure that I am staying as up to speed as possible with what our personnel, what the individuals that I support, what they have to go through. I do what I can to attend the same kind of training that they do. So I know the tools that they have to use, the computer system. I know how easy it is or how easy it isn't to use. When I do go out and do that Gemba walk, as it were, I do everything I can to not interfere with their normal operation. So if, let's say I go to a hospital, I'll try to coordinate ahead of time with the project manager. Hey, do I need to have any kind of specific access? Is there a code to the door? Is there a key card or whatever? So that you're not having to let me in and out of different areas throughout the site. I'm not wanting to distract. If I pull them away from what they normally have to do, then that actually it completely negates the purpose of seeing them in action.
Exactly.
I take that to heart. I don't want to interrupt their work. I want them to do how they work perfectly normal. I don't want to get in the way. And unless there is something that really needs to be addressed in the moment, I do my job, I let them do their job, and then we get together afterwards, or I'll send them an email, we'll have a phone call and whatnot and discuss how did it go? Did I get in the way? I noticed this actually took place, did it get taken care of? Is this something I can help you address, with the logistics team or whatnot? So that's that difference between going to do an audit and then observing operations. If you get in the way, you're not observing, you're getting in the way.
Frankly, the presence of anything that is different than daily operation impacts the daily operation. Oh, here comes the safety guy. Everybody put on your hard hats and your PPE and like everything's perfectly in aligned. And it's like, yeah, you schedule 2 weeks in advance to have the vice president. And it's kind of funny because I go to this little coffee shop in the morning on the way to work. And I know these ladies and gentlemen that work there, and they even let me in a little early. Sometimes I'm a very early riser. And I have my booth, and I go there and I sit down. I noticed one day, place was buzzing, and I'm like, "What is going on around here?" April's one of the servers, and she goes, "Oh, the CEO's coming in." And it was spotless, and it was going so. I mean, it was. I'm like, okay, this is what it's like when the safety guy's about to arrive. You know, everything's right. It's like, are we really accomplishing the objective of going there and seeing what's really happening in the world around us? You go back and you get a straight A's, and then all of a sudden somebody gets injured, and you're like, well, I watched it and it was perfect. It's like, yeah, because everyone was on their best behavior.
Yes.
It's very interesting philosophy around trying to be almost a ninja, almost invisible.
To this day, the best example I have seen of doing a proper Gemba walk is that old reality series, Undercover Boss.
Yes.
Undercover Boss was the epitome of a proper Gemba walk. It's just my opinion, right? It's just my opinion of a proper Gemba walk, because it wasn't just seeing how things went and asking questions, which is what you're supposed to do. They were evaluating and auditing the process at the same time. They developed a relationship with their employees where they went from being the boss to being an advocate for what was taking place in the field. And when you can establish that difference from being someone that's going out there to audit and observe to being someone that's going out there to learn so that you can better advocate for what needs to be done in the field, especially when it comes to safety, you'll find that the communication from your field personnel is increased exponentially. They talk more normally. They're less likely to hide things and say, "Hey, look, this has always been an issue. How do I address it, or how can we address this?" When you switch from being an auditor to an advocate, your communication and your operations improve. Safety adherence and participation increases across the board.
It's so interesting to me that we always look at things in a binary sense. It's a carrot or a stick. And the reality is it's not either one. It's somewhere in between. It's being trusted and trusting and not feeling as though I can't communicate what's going on because there will be repercussions of some sort. And I mean, philosophically, that's a really challenging situation. As you were talking about this, I was thinking last week we had about 97 different safety professionals join our platform. We have a lot of traction. Folks love what we're doing, and they are joining us because there's great opportunity, and they can go and do surveys, they can do walks, they can do assessments, they can do. I was thinking to myself, I wonder if we index people who are trained on Gemba. I guarantee you we know the data because if it's on somebody's background or somebody's CV or resume, we have it. I do wonder whether or not it would be an interesting offering for us to be offering a proper Gemba walk. Which a proper Gemba walk is an invisible walk, but you could still do it using a third party if they were. I think a lot of the concerns people have about using third parties would go away if they had the philosophy of Gemba.
Doing it third party, I think where the advantage could come in if you have the right personnel and the right team members and stuff is because, especially with some large companies or some companies where it's a niche kind of operation, you'll run into a situation where not all of your safety personnel are experienced in all of the different areas of the operation. And it's hard to do a good Gemba walk when you don't know how that operation you're observing functions in the first place. That's where a third party, point of view, if you have that person, like, hey, we come in, we actually have personnel that specialize in that. And we just come out just do like that one thing to help relay the information and findings back to your EHS team. And here's our recommendations, right? That's what that specialty kind of area comes in. So I think it could work in that sense, especially in some industries where, it's hard to find people that understand those specific operations to do your safety.
We executed in December. This was actually a really impressive statistic. I was very proud of my team. We did 118 fire extinguisher surveys at 118 different locations in December for one client during the holidays. And we did 100% of them, and they were all in different states. And we did it with localized talent.
That's part of the operation.
It was. And we only had 6 of 118 that didn't go quite perfectly. And we got 118 done. We redeployed somebody else because they either went to the wrong location or they didn't. A lot of it was actually client specific. 6 out of 118 is pretty darn solid. Even in statistically, you're getting, that's what I always say. Statistically, when you're doing this kind of volume, you're going to have a few that go wonky.
It's one of the first things you learn in this industry is that you can have the best heat map, you can have the best risk analysis, you can have, the best person doing, the hardest work. You cannot figure for the human factor. The human factor is what you cannot figure for, which is why in EHS and in safety, we have to go to what is the worst case scenario and build up from there. But it's the human factor is what keeps getting in the way. That's just how it is.
I always use this example of when people always say, well, large organizations don't really have a need for you. And I say, actually, quite the contrary. They're the ones who need us the most because generally speaking, you're around 1% to 2% of your workforce is in the safety field. So if you have 100 employees, you're going to have 1 that's a safety person. If you have 200, you're going to have 2 and so forth. It's around that number. And so when you get to 10,000, they're still only going to have under 100 that are in total. And that's a lot of people to be covered by that number. And so as you start looking at it, the thing that I've come to realize is when you're shipping your people around and they're traveling, and for some reason they show up and something went sideways, now they either have to go back and reschedule and go back again on a plane in a hotel, and you're doubling, tripling your expense, or they're staying. And now I planned on it being a 2-day trip, and now it's a 4-day trip. And it happens all the time because something came up and we can't do it right now. Where if you have a localized person that came from home, drove 30 minutes, can't do it right now, we need you to come back. Now, that's not ideal for us, candidly. It's not great for the pro, but it's a heck of a lot better than the company would have had to do, which is either keeping an employee there for days and days waiting. At least you could reschedule for a few days out and that person can go and do their other jobs. Or you have to cancel the whole thing. Let me ask you a different question. So going back to the personal world, I found a through line, and I think I probably know the answer, but I'm not going to make an assumption. From a hobbies perspective, do you have any risky hobbies?
I have a couple that you might consider risky. One, definitely, I like going shooting. I have my own gun collection, and I'm a mechanic by trade. I'm a garage mechanic.
Me too. My hands are all beat. My hands are all beat up.
Yeah, I'm just now healing on a couple of knuckles. My wife's car is tore apart in the garage right now. Actually. So I mechanics is probably, as far as like what I do consistently and as a hobby, riding motorcycles. Motorcycles is my big thing. I'll work on cars if I have to. I love working on motorcycles. I ride motorcycles all the time. That's my high risk hobby is riding motorcycles.
I'm telling you, I have found that to be consistent. In fact, I had a lady yesterday. I haven't interviewed her yet, but has no high risk hobbies at all. But she was in an anomaly. I had a gentleman that did experimental airplanes. I had a gentleman that did drag racing with 1,000 horsepower DIY, or 10,000 horsepower DIY drag race car that he built. I have another one in his 50s that does motocross, not just motorcycles, but motocross. Oh, wait, I had a skydiver. I mean, it's hilarious because you think we're a bunch of eggheads that, like rules and regulations, and it's like, nope. Like, and I'm a big wrencher. I'm rebuilding a 67 Bronco right now, and having a blast doing it. And I like a little bit of adventure, and I like getting my hand dirty and all that good stuff. So, but yeah, okay, the through line did check out. All right, so I'm pretty consistent there.
It's kind of funny you mentioned that too, because I work on stuff around the house. We do some of our remodeling and construction on the house and stuff, and I had to put heating coils up on the roof right before like all the snow and ice kicked in this season. And I have my son up there with me, who initially is like terrified of heights. And it was funny because I have pictures. We've got the hard hats. I have his fall arrest harnesses on, and I got in line out around the chimney stack and everything. And we first get up there, and the first thing he says is, "I'm not going anywhere near the edge." And then 30 minutes later, he's like right on the edge of the roof with the lines, and my wife is looking up at us like, "I'm going inside. I can't watch."
So I have a story about that. When I was, it must have been, it was 21 years ago, or 22. My wife was very pregnant with our first child, Nick, or my son, and he was due in November, and he came in November, but it was right around then. No, she must have just had the baby at this point, because I wouldn't have put the Christmas lights up at that point in time. But I'm on the roof, and she's like, "Get off of there! I mean, you're gonna fall, and I'm gonna have to raise this baby by myself." And the whole night, I'm like, "Stop it! I was not tied off. I was not doing anything proper." And I recognize that now. I was a kid and was not in this industry at that point in time. I was actually in emergency management supplying FEMA. Whole nother conversation there, given what you said on your background. But so I give her a bunch of grief. I'm like, "Just go inside. I'm just finishing up. I'll be there in a second." And she's like, "I can't believe you would do that." And she goes inside, "Oh, man." And I'm like, drama. So a week later, she calls me, and this is actually a really sad story. And so I don't mean to make light of it, but there was a guy that was tenting a house 4 doors down, fell off the house 4 doors down. Now he was a worker, and he passed. And I'm like, I'm never going to be able to get anywhere near the roof again. This is officially a problem. Everything I said, stop it. You're being dramatic. It never happens. A week later, it happened. I'm like, okay, I'm done. Well, Joe, I have absolutely enjoyed this so much. Thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast. I would be delighted to work with you if we ever get the opportunity. I don't have any idea if we are or we aren't. It doesn't matter to me. I just am really pleased to make your acquaintance and have you on.
It was great. I appreciate the time, and I was really surprised when you guys reached out and asked me to do this. It was, it's been a privilege. I really appreciate it. So thank you. It's been a great time.
And if you ever get to Phoenix, which if you're talking about snow falling, you might want to come sooner rather than later, please look me up. I'd be happy to buy you a beer and have a nice chat.
Deal. Thanks, Mike.
That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how Yellowbird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit goyellowbird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Yellowbird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.